Every creature has an alpha, the strongest, the perfected, the ruler. But before alphas existed, there were primordial beings, raw, ancient, and unrefined. So here's the real question: who truly sits at the top? Today, we're looking at the top 10 alphas and their primordial forms. Are you familiar with these beings? If there's a creature in Japanese mythology that effortlessly bridges trickster, guardian, and demigod, it's the Kitsune. Feared for their illusions, yet revered for their wisdom, these fox spirits sit at the intersection of folklore and religion. But behind the modern legend lies a much older bloodline, primordial ancestors that shaped what the Kitsune would eventually become. At their base, Kitsune are spiritual foxes capable of shape-shifting, possession, and supernatural influence. Their alpha state isn't just the famous Kyubi, nine-tailed fox. It culminates in the Tenko, a fox that has lived for centuries, gained 9 tails, and ascended into a near-omnipotent celestial being. These alphas can bend fortune, serve gods, or act as divine messengers, making them the apex form of the entire species rather than its origin point. Their primordial ancestors, however, tell a very different story. The first is the Huli Jing of ancient China, appearing as early as the Shanhai Jing, where the 9-tailed fox was a predatory monster, sometimes described as a man-eater with the voice of a crying child, a far darker template than the refined Japanese Kitsune. The second primordial root is the Myobu, the sacred white fox of Inari in Shinto myth, spirits that did not evolve but simply arrived with the gods, acting as divine heralds long before mortal foxes ever gained tails or magic. Compared to these origins, one monstrous, one god-born, the modern Kyubi and Tenko are not primordial ancestors at all, but the final evolutionary peak of the Kitsune lineage. They weren't the only tricksters lurking at the edge of our world. Across the forests of another land, an older, stranger group watched humans with fascination and cruelty. Among the countless supernatural beings of European myth, fairies are the most deceptively powerful. Sometimes tiny winged tricksters, sometimes immortal lords of the otherworld, they rule a hidden society parallel to mankind. And at the top of that hierarchy stand the Alpha fairies, most famously known through Shakespeare, the queen and king of the fairies. Beings that command the entire court of Fae, rather than simply haunting gardens or forests. At their base, fairies are nature-aligned spirits associated with enchantment, luck, curses, and hidden realms. Their alpha version manifests as the fairy monarchs, rulers of the seelie and unseelie courts, depending on the tradition, capable of shaping seasons, fate, and even human destiny. These monarchs are not first ancestors, they are the end-stage apex, the ones who inherited command over the Fae, rather than originating it. Their primordial origins come from different mythological roots depending on the cultural tradition. In English and Germanic folklore, fairies conceptually descend from the elves, Old English Alf, luminous, semi-divine beings found in Norse and Germanic myth, not the tiny winged creatures of modern fantasy. Meanwhile, in Irish and broader Celtic tradition, the beings known as Aos Si are understood as the transformed or withdrawn Tuatha De Danann, a supernatural race who ruled Ireland before retreating into the otherworld. In both cases, the primordial forms are not small nature spirits, but ancient, powerful, and often godlike beings, making the later fairy monarchs the refined apex outcome of a lineage that originally began with gods and elves rather than garden sprites. But not all ancient beings lived in the wild. Some walked among humans, feeding on them, learning their fears, and mastering a darker form of immortality. Few monsters are as universally feared and strangely admired as the vampire. From medieval Europe to modern pop culture, they've been framed as aristocrats of the night, feeding on blood, shunning the sun, and outliving civilizations. But the truth behind their lineage leads to something far older than fangs, coffins, or castles. At their base, vampires are undead or cursed beings who sustain themselves on blood and possess enhanced physical and supernatural abilities. Their alpha state is the elder or ancient vampire, the oldest of their kind, often thousands of years old. These alphas are immune to many weaknesses, can create progeny, manipulate minds, and sometimes even shapeshift. They are considered the pure lineage that all younger vampires descend from. Yet even the most powerful elder is still just a perfected form of a curse, not the original source. The primordial origin of vampiric mythology traces to a being that is not a vampire at all, Lilith. In ancient Mesopotamian, Jewish, and Near Eastern tradition, Lilith appears as a night demon or first woman figure associated with seduction, infant mortality, and blood drinking. Medieval demonologists linked her to the Lilitu spirits, night creatures that preyed on humans and inspired early lore about nocturnal predators. These Lilith traditions are considered the mythic proto-template for vampirism, a nocturnal, human-like blood-linked entity long before Christian Europe ever coined the term vampire. In other words, where the elder is the alpha vampire, Lilith is the primordial archetype, the ancient night being from which the vampire mythos evolved indirectly, rather than a vampire progenitor in the literal sense. Yet even they feared what came with the full moon, a curse that tore civilization from the flesh and dragged it back into something primal, violent, and unstoppable. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe. Now, on to the next one. If vampires are the aristocrats of horror, then werewolves are the raw embodiment of rage, instinct, and primal biology. From medieval hunts to modern movies, they're depicted as humans who burst into fur and fangs under the full moon. Yet behind that cinematic chaos lies a much older origin story, rooted in ancient Greek punishment, not power. At their base, werewolves are humans cursed or infected with lycanthropy, transforming into wolf-like beings with enhanced strength, senses, and aggression. Their alpha equivalents appear throughout modern folklore and fiction under titles like Alpha Wolf, Ulfric, or Pack Leader, individuals who command lesser wolves through dominance rather than frenzy. Unlike ordinary werewolves who lose control during transformation, these alphas can shift at will, retain human intellect, and exert hierarchy over the pack. In other words, the alpha form represents mastery of the curse, not just raw power. But their primordial version, however, is not about dominance, it's about divine punishment. The earliest recognizable prototype of the werewolf legend is King Lycaon from Greek mythology, who was transformed into a wolf by Zeus after serving human flesh to the gods. In this primordial form, transformation wasn't a path to strength or leadership, it was a curse of degradation, stripping a king of humanity as retribution for sacrilege. Unlike later alphas who embrace the wolf for power, Lycaon became the first werewolf by losing his humanity, not mastering it, marking a stark contrast between the cursed origin and the controlled modern apex. But curses weren't the only punishment mortals feared. In lands far from Europe, monsters weren't bitten into existence, they were judged into it. If there's a creature that embodies Japan's fear of the unknown, rage, death, and the monstrous, it's the Oni. With horns, fangs, and skin like iron, they appear in legends as brutal demons that punish the wicked or terrorize the world of the living. But the modern Oni isn't where the story begins. Its bloodline reaches back into the underworld itself. At their base, Oni are supernatural ogres associated with misfortune, violence, and spiritual impurity. But their alpha form is known as the Kijin, a rare class of Oni who have transcended bestial wrath and gained intelligence, martial discipline, and even divinity. Unlike ordinary Oni, who are often depicted as chaotic brutes, Kijin are commanders, warlords, or demigods empowered by spiritual energy, wrath, or divine will. In myth and pop culture alike, they represent the pinnacle evolution of the Oni race, not its origin. Their primordial ancestors are far stranger and older. The first origin lies in the Yomotsu Shikane, the hags of the underworld from the Kojiki creation myth. Sent by the deceased goddess Izanami to hunt Izanagi as he fled Yomi, they are the first physical Oni-like beings, marking the shift from formless spirits to monstrous underworld enforcers, true primordial Oni. The second origin comes from China through the character Gui, originally meaning ghost or spirit of the dead. As Japanese beliefs about invisible Onu merged with Chinese Gui and later with Buddhist Rakshasa, man-eating demons, the Oni transformed into the horned, muscular ogres we recognize today. In other words, where the Yomotsu Shikome represent the mythic underworld progenitor, Gui represent the cultural and spiritual template, and from these two roots, the Oni evolved, with the Kijin standing as their final perfected form. And that judgment said something unsettling. Monsters and humans weren't so different. In fact, some myths said the real danger was never horns or fangs, it was free will. Among all mythological beings, humans often appear the least extraordinary, until legends zoom in on the outliers. Every culture features humans who shatter the limits of mortality, warriors who slay the unkillable, sages who reshape civilizations, and chosen ones whose destinies bend the world. These figures are humanity's alphas, individuals whose power, fate, or divine favor elevates them far beyond ordinary men and women. For humanity, the alpha state is the hero, a mortal who operates on the edge of the divine. These include demigods, blessed champions, or prodigious humans whose strength, intellect, or destiny rivals that of gods and monsters. In Greek myth, that's figures like Heracles and Perseus. In medieval epics, saints and paladin kings fill the role. In Eastern myth, seers, sages, and martial prodigies serve the same function. Whether their gifts come from divine parentage, sacred contracts, or sheer fate, these alphas define the highest possible tier a human can reach within mythic storytelling. But the primordial version of humanity predates all heroes. In religion and mythology, these first ancestors are known as protoplasts, from Greek protoplastos, first formed. They are the original humans, created directly by divine or cosmic forces, serving as the template for the entire species. Examples include Adam and Eve in Abrahamic tradition, Ask and Embla in Norse myth, or the various clay-formed humans in Mesoamerican and Mesoamerican creation stories. These beings are not heroes, they are origins, often tasked with founding lineages or repopulating the world after cataclysms. Compared to them, heroes are not the starting point of humanity, but its mythic peak, the final expression of what mortals can become. But if free will makes humans dangerous, imagine beings who wield it without limit. No mortality, no rules, only malice, hierarchy, and cosmic rebellion. Among the beings associated with corruption, fear, and spiritual domination, demons stand as one of the most recognizable. Across myth, religion, and medieval lore, they appear as tempters, destroyers, and rulers of infernal realms, entities that operate through influence rather than brute force. At their base, demons are malevolent or chaotic spirits, tied to disease, misfortune, madness, and moral decay. Their strongest form, what we'll call the Alpha version, emerges in medieval demonology as high-ranking infernal rulers with titles, functions, and dominion over other spirits. In Christian lore, these manifest most famously as the archdemons, a hierarchy culminating in the 7 princes of hell, each embodying a deadly sin and commanding legions rather than merely tormenting humans. But these are not the first demons. The primordial version of demons predates hell, Satan, and sin-based hierarchy by millennia, originating in ancient Mesopotamian mythology, 3000 BCE. Back then, demons were formless chaos spirits, serving as agents of the gods rather than rebels against them. Among the oldest are the 7, Sebetu, born from the sky god On and the earth, described as destructive storms and evil winds that could bring plague or protection. These primordial demons were embodiments of chaos before cosmic order, making the later archdemons the alpha expression, not the origin point. Yet for every rebel, there is an enforcer, higher, older, forged not to fall, but to watch, command, and execute the will of something far beyond mortal morality. Among all supernatural beings, angels might be the most misunderstood. Often imagined as gentle guardians, yet originally portrayed as terrifying agents of divine will. Across myth, scripture, and art, these beings evolved from cosmic enforcers into symbols of purity and order. And at the very top of their hierarchy exists a rare elite, those who command rather than obey. At their base, angels are spiritual beings tasked with delivering messages, enforcing divine will, or protecting creation, depending on the religion. Their alpha class is the archangels, who act as military commanders rather than mere messengers. Figures like Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael don't just carry messages, they oversee nations, wage spiritual wars, and guard the cosmic order. In theological hierarchy, these archangels represent the apex functional form of angels, elite operatives that stand just below the divine in authority and power. But the primordial ancestors of angel concepts go back far earlier than Christianity or Judaism, into the mythic bedrock of ancient civilizations. One of the earliest parallels appears in Sumer and Akkad, c. 3000 BCE, where the Anunnaki were divine beings associated with fate, kingship, and cosmic order, while winged protective spirits, such as the Apkallu, were depicted as guardians, imagery that strongly anticipates later angelic visual motifs. Next came Zoroastrianism's Amesha Spentans and Fravashi, divine emanations and pre-existent guardian spirits that introduced the idea of heavenly beings tasked with protecting creation and individual souls. And finally, the Greeks contributed the structural role, the angeloi, or angels, with Iris serving as a winged intermediary between gods and mortals, and iconography that directly shaped early Christian artistic depictions of angels. Compared to these primordial forms, cosmic administrators, spiritual emissaries, and winged guardians, the archangels are not the origin of angels, but rather a refined category shaped over millennia of religious and theological development. But not all power came from the heavens. Some came from the raw chaos before heaven existed, vast, scaled, coiled around the bones of creation itself. Across nearly every ancient civilization, dragons occupy the top tier of mythical creatures, beings tied to storms, oceans, mountains, the underworld, and even creation itself. They can appear as serpents, winged reptiles, colossal worms, or divine beasts. But the awe-inspiring dragons most people picture, wise, destructive, or world-shaping, represent the strongest narrative forms, not the earliest origins. As base creatures, dragons are usually serpentine or reptilian beings connected to cosmic or natural forces. Their alpha forms differ by culture. In East Asia, the Tianlong, celestial dragon, rules the heavens and maintains cosmic order, while in Norse myth, dragons like Fafnir evolve from mortal origins into greed-corrupted worms of immense strength. Meanwhile, Nidhogger represents another apex, an underworld dragon gnawing at the roots of Yggdrasil, capable of playing a role in Ragnarok. These forms are narrative pinnacles, creatures that have ascended from animals, cursed beings, or divine entities into the strongest state their mythology recognizes, whether celestial, destructive, or apocalyptic. Their primordial roots are far older and linked to mythic chaos rather than celestial authority. One of the earliest recorded primordial dragon-like beings in human literature is Tiamat of Mesopotamian mythology, 2nd millennium BCE. Tiamat is a primordial chaos and saltwater deity, often depicted as a serpentine or dragon-like monster representing the untamed ocean before creation. In the Enuma Elish, she births the first gods, and her defeat by Marduk becomes the act that forms the ordered world from her body. Compared to this primordial chaos dragon archetype, the celestial dragons of East Asia are not origins at all. They are the civilized and perfected descendants of a much older mythic lineage. And if dragons shaped mythic landscapes, imagine those who shaped the dragons. Beings whose first breath separated light from darkness, and whose silence outlives civilizations. Among the most powerful beings in myth are the gods, not demons, not monsters, but entities that rule over creation, fate, and divine law. They lead pantheons, command cosmic forces, and shape the fates of mortals with a gesture. Yet even these supreme rulers are not the oldest things in mythology. Behind every thunder-wielding king or sun-crowned queen stands something older, stranger, and more fundamental than mere divinity. At their base, gods are supernatural beings with authority over specific domains: war, wisdom, storms, fertility, death, and more. Their alpha-level figures are the beings most people know: Zeus of the Olympians, Odin of the Aesir, Ra of the Egyptian Ennead, Amaterasu of the Shinto pantheon. These are the gods who sit at the top of their divine hierarchies, issuing laws, waging wars, and shaping worlds. They are rulers, arbiters, and kings, but they are not the first. The primordial level of divinity predates pantheons entirely. These are not gods of things, they are the things: the sky, the earth, the void, the sea, the night, and the raw chaos that existed before order. In Greek myth, before Zeus came, chaos, Gaia, Tartarus, Nyx, and Erebus, not rulers, but building blocks of existence itself. Similar concepts appear worldwide: the Ginnungagap and Ymir before Odin in Norse myth, Nun and the primeval waters before the Ennead in Egypt, Bikuta Matsukami before the rest of the Shinto kami. Compared to these reality-shaping origins, the alpha gods of pantheons are simply the second generation of power, the ones who inherited reality rather than created it.